Hi, thank you for coming and leaving the lunch at the time it was supposed to. This is the most difficult panel because you have to fight against sleep, but we will do our best to keep you awake. I'm Marc Navarro. I'm from Barcelona, and I started in Coworking in 2011. I have been running spaces until last year, until 2018. And right now I'm a co-working consultant full-time. Um, and co-working, it destroys your life, but in a positive way. Let's be clear. Let's be clear. I mean, how many of you are working in a co-working space right now? Okay, keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. Okay, how many of you will you be happy to come back to a regular office? Just one. Okay. Then we'll have some kind of surgery to help with that.
Just give the Kool-Aid some time to kick in.
Yeah. So I'm here to moderate, so I don't want to, it's like a football referee. The less you intervene, it's better. So I'm some sort of riot police. So if they got into trouble or they cause trouble, then I will act. But otherwise, the show is theirs. So thank you very much, Mike, Mubarak, and Tobias. So please, go ahead and explain us how co-working changed your life.
Do you want to go?
Oh, no, please, please.
You want to go? It didn't change my life. It saved my life. So 2012, I woke up one day and went to work in a job that I absolutely hated. I was making more money than I'd ever made in my entire life. I had an expense account. I had driver service. We were hanging out at the Four Seasons, the Ritz-Carlton. Like, you would have thought that I loved it. I fucking hated it. I was miserable, and I quit. I just quit. It was April the 20th, 420, so I was like totally stoned in the morning. I'm not gonna lie, woke and blazed, and went to the office. I just walked out, and I was like, oh, I can do what I'm doing for this multinational corporation by myself. Not gonna be that hard. I can find a client, right? I'm gonna be my own boss. Everyone says, hustle harder, and you can work on a laptop, and you can live the dream poolside in Bali, And flash forward 7 months, 8 months, I'd gained 40 pounds. I was living in an English basement apartment in DC that was like half finished because I could no longer afford my fancy schmancy rent that was a block and a half away from the White House. I was watching all 4 hours of the Today Show, which is a morning news show. I don't know if you know that. No one should watch all 4 hours of the Today Show. And I was really struggling to keep the one client I had, let alone get more clients. And it was a slippery slope because I was lonely, I was depressed, I was hanging out with my head in the refrigerator, and if I wasn't doing that, I was dealing with issues with substance abuse. And when I wasn't at home, I was on the road, and I was working out of coffee shops and hotel rooms are just as lonely. And I had a client who found a venue that just so happened to be this thing called a co-working space. And I thought a co-working space was for the next Uber. I thought you had to be a tech startup to be in a co-working space. And I walked in and I saw that it was all these people like me that worked for themselves. They were professionals, they were consultants, they were event planners, they were contractors, accountants, lawyers, you name it. And my entire life changed. I was on a really slippery slope, dealing with depression, dealing with drug abuse, being super overweight, and within a year and a half, was working out of co-working spaces. The first one I joined in DC, people actually cared about me. They'd be like, "Oh, you didn't come in the last 2 days." Well, because I didn't come in because I didn't get out of bed, and so it felt really nice to know that someone was missing me and that we didn't have our funny joke in the kitchen making coffee. And the company next to me, we kind of had desks in an open design. They offered me a contract, and then that led to another contract. But they offered me that contract because they knew who I was and they had the belief and the faith in me, my ability to do it. And before you knew it, we were producing events for Google and the Smithsonian and Living Social, and it launched me and brought me to places like this, right? And so I went from a really bad place where I was going to have to move in back with my parents and have no money to where I am now. So co-working didn't just change it, it saved it, my life. And it's not about the office space, it's about the connectivity. Sorry.
Say something bad about co-working.
Something bad about co-working?
Yeah. I challenge you.
I think sometimes there's too much focus on community. Because if you go to a co-working space, you go to a co-working space to be productive. You don't always go to be social. And so there are some spaces where sometimes I get guilted because, heaven forbid, I want to do work. And I don't want to go to the group lunch, and I don't want to go to the game night, and I don't want to go to the movie night, and I don't want to, I got to work, right? So, and I've done too much talking. Cut me off.
Mubarak, because otherwise you will fight for who's next.
No, I'm done.
I mean, I can fight, but... Hi, everyone. My name is Muaz, and actually, before I talk about how co-working changed my life, I want to talk a little bit about how freaking awesome not just Serbia is, but this event and all the people here. And here's the deal. I mean, I want to stand up, man. I want to bring the energy. Here's the deal. The first co-working space I've ever been in my life, like the co-working space that actually showed me for the first time in my life what a co-working space is a co-working space called Nest in Dubai. And I never knew that there was a thing called co-working spaces in general. And I wanted to impress this girl, and she was like, oh, you're going to come and check out this place. And I'm like, oh, God, okay, I'm going to go and see it. And turns out, right now, I'm sitting in a panel with the person who designed the co-working space, who made the co-working space, and who hired the people who work there for the first time. How freaking awesome is this event? I mean, I know that this event is here to stay. This is just awesome. Like, randomly, I was having lunch, and I was like, oh, your name is Mike. Okay, yeah, I'm from Dubai. Well, I used to go to this co-working space. And he designed it, he made it. This is freaking awesome. So, I want to talk about how co-working changed my life in using 3 to 4 points. The first one is the fact that when I first went to a co-working space, obviously just impress this girl and go. The manager told me about it, and I was like, what is this? This is like some office, what is this about? And I realized she took me through what a co-working space is. And then I told her what I was doing, because by that time I was 2 years into trying to start my first company, which is a software company. And when I told her what I was doing, she was like, oh, you might want to talk to this guy called Marty, who is his best friend as well. And Marty is from Silicon Valley, and he's a very, very experienced tech entrepreneur. And she was like, if you can come tomorrow, I can get you to sit with this guy, and I guess he can help. And I obviously came the next day I came, and this guy spent like 2 hours with me, and here was the clicker. He was really willing to help. Now, with that being said, the first thing for me is the fact that, I'll come back to this point of what happened in that co-working space that next day, but the first thing is, I mean, if you know anything about starting a company or doing entrepreneurship, is that the one common thing we all know is that it's very, very hard. It's very difficult. I mean, Elon Musk famously says it's like chewing glass and staring into the abyss. And it's really that. And it can get quite lonely. And so having a community like a co-working space, for me, served as a cushion that made me keep coming back. Because sometimes entrepreneurship can get quite dark, that the only thing that would just hold you, you just don't quit. You just keep going to see where it goes. And for me, co-working was one of the things that made me not quit and just keep coming back because of these amazing people. So, and talking about the community, I know that it's like community is like the all-time marketing term for co-working spaces and everybody who talks about co-working. And it's almost slowly becoming a buzzword. But there's something really specific about community that I want to talk about, not community itself. Before I went to a co-working space, I've been to many networking events, I've been in many communities and many places where you just meet people that you tend to, you kind of click. And the one thing that differentiates the community in co-working is the genuinity of, it's how genuine the co-working community is. And what I mean by that is, I suddenly found myself in this place where it's not about, oh, we're a community and I would love to help you. No, people actually care. People actually care and people actually want to help. And when I've thought about it for a long time, and what I realize is when you go to a networking event or when you go somewhere and meet someone, it's usually very transactional. It's like, okay, I need some help from you, and hopefully there's something I can do for you so I get what I want and I'm out. It's usually very transactional. It's not real. But the community in co-working spaces or in the co-working community in general is very real. People actually want to help you. People actually want to help as a consequence of the community, not because they want something from you. The will for people to help, the will that people have to help, is actually very, very genuine. And so people want to help you for the fact that they're in the same community with you, not because they want something from you, and people actually care. And so for me, it was really, really unique that I found a community like this. And then, I kept stumbling on many, many different parts of co-working. And then eventually, the third and the last thing is that co-working pretty much became a major part of what I call my career today, because I happened to find some challenges within the co-working community that I decided it was something I would like to solve, which I would probably like to show you. I can see that the slides are already flowing. So just to give you a quick backstory, I don't want to take time. I really want to get through this as quick as possible. I'm currently at a co-working space that is an incubator in Dubai called In5, and it's one of the biggest, sponsored by the government, so it's very big. And as a member there, they are very big, so they have about 1,000 members. And what my platform does, what we are building, well, it's not launched yet, by the way, is that we are building a platform that originally we were building a platform that allowed people to find co-founders. And because the co-working management know what we're doing, they just kept calling me all like literally at least once or twice a month. I'll get a call from someone in the co-working management saying, hey, there's this new member we have. He's looking for a co-founder. Can you please help him? And what I realized is that they have about 1,000 members. Almost everything you might need is there within the community, but there's no connectivity. Nobody really, it's like they try to do all these breakfast events that many people don't really come to, and when you are going there, other people are not going there. And so there are many people that come to the same space, but they really don't know each other. And there are other factors as well, like the fact that some people are just generally very shy and cannot really approach people. And at one point, the co-working community told me, look, we really like what you're doing, and we think it's very close to something that can solve our problem. What do you think you can solve this problem? And so we started researching into why people are not connecting and why, it's an amazing pool of members. And because it's not just, you can't just get into that community, you have to have an innovative product. That's just the nature of the community. I realized that it's just the connectivity that is not there. So we're currently just finalizing the build of a tool that allows co-working spaces to engage their members more and to be able to, I'll just show it to you really quickly. So this is just like a screen of how every member in the co-working community in your co-working space can just quickly see and search every other member, and they can contact them, and it's a private community. Only members that you approve will be there, and they can there's a community feed, they can chat with each other, they can ask general questions and ask for help. And then there is booking. We're trying to make the booking really, really easy as well. That's part of how the booking really looks like. And then there's your own management tools that you can use to add new members, to connect people, to really manage the community. This is just sort of 10% of what it is, because I just didn't want this talk to be based on that. So it's like 10% of what it is, but we're building analytics for co-working spaces to be able to connect, to be able to see what is the data around their co-working space. So, but ultimately, a major part of how it changed my life is the fact that it became a major thing that I'm passionate about, and I'm trying to use technology, which is something I really care about, to enhance the general co-working community, to really unleash the power of what co-working can be. And the last thing I want to talk about is something I don't think most people talk about is co-working gave me a sense, a little bit of more fulfillment. I mean, fulfillment is very connected to happiness. And when I first joined a co-working space that was designed by my friend over here, for the first time in my life, because that co-working space was very new then, and there were many people, I went there, I was a member 2 weeks after it opened, and most of the members didn't really know anything about tech or the digital world, and I was coming from a background that I was a digital specialist of a very, very big, of Emirates, so.
You weren't our target demographic.
Obviously. No. So when I came there, I became sort of, within the small community then, I became sort of the guy that was like known as, oh, he's the guy you talk to if you need help with like digital stuff or like software. And then suddenly, anybody that had a problem with software or the digital world came to me, and that really gave me sense of, it gave me the sense of belonging and sense of like, I felt very useful. I felt like I was really useful to other people, which I really didn't know this would, be a big deal for me, but it was. And that sense of usefulness to the community really, really contributed to my general happiness. And so that's about the point of what makes how co-working changed my life.
Now it's Tobias' turn. Before starting, you shall share with them your background. Before you're going to make a statement, right?
Yes, I'm sorry. I prepared to speak because they asked me to, but I think I was the only one who got the memo. I'm working at St. Oberholz in Berlin. I'm the head of coworking there, and also a coworking consultant to some of our clients there. I'm really pleased to be here at this great conference, I must say. It's really inspiring what Miro and his team organized here. I love such events because this is the chance where we meet and talk about co-working, where we meet other people who do the same. And even there are a lot of co-working spaces in Berlin. Everybody has this doubts from time to time, I guess. Is it okay what we are doing? Is this right? Is this really the future? And I never have these doubts at these conferences because you all, you are as stupid as I am because you're doing co-working, or we are all in the same way here. Mira already asked me last year if I didn't want to participate here, and I've been wondering nearly all the year what I can talk about with such an audience here. I don't want you to be bored, and what can I teach you about co-working that you don't know already? Then I learned some weeks ago that the question is how co-working saved my life. And it may not seem that way to you here in the hall, but that question is harder than explaining what co-working is or why WeWork is different. And especially after these great stories here. Perhaps different than Mike, I don't think co-working saved my life. Co-working changed my life entirely. And I don't know how my life would have developed without co-working, but I hope I would have been alive at least. Yeah. Just want to be sure. Co-working has had an impact on my life like probably no other thing yet. I must say perhaps so far because my wife is pregnant and we are expecting our first child. I didn't tell my mother yet because I want to do it in person. So please don't tweet about it. Yeah?
Now we have a reason to tweet about it.
I didn't want to write her an SMS. And I will see her in 2 weeks, and then she will hear it from me first. Okay, so what's ahead of me, I can only guess that co-working can't keep up with that. When I moved to Berlin after my studies some years ago, I worked as a freelancer for various companies, international companies all over the world, but not from Berlin. And they put me in co-working spaces and shared offices. They said, here, you work from there, because yeah, this is how you do it as a freelancer. Yeah? This was a completely new experience for me because until then I worked in very classical offices, you can say. And I can't say that it felt anything wrong about it. They were all open plan offices and nobody had a fixed workplace. So every day I was sitting somewhere else and I meet all my colleagues. I really love to work in classical offices. I was a PowerPoint designer for a big consulting company. And I must say, co-working didn't really interest me for a long time. I appreciated the well-known advantages of co-working. We all heard them here. But I more thought like an infrastructure of the way I am working. Yeah? As a remote working freelancer, I need to be in a co-working space. That's it. And probably you know it, that the people who don't care about co-working are mostly the members of co-working spaces. And most of yeah, they're never at our conferences, but perhaps we should invite them more. So I was really more interested in doing remote work. And after a holiday in the Belgian town of Bruges in September 2014, when I had to work the whole holiday because my substitute fell ill on my first day, I discovered that I could really do my job from anywhere and that it was fun. So my wife and I, we experienced that. You know, I had to work the whole vacation, so I asked myself, what would I do in Berlin? I would go to a co-working space. So I went to a co-working space in Bruges, and I worked there the whole vacation, like 2 or 3 hours every day. But it was enough to organize what had to be done at work. And then I asked the owner of the co-working space, who's working in a co-working space in Bruges? And she told me, businessman on family vacation. Organizing what has to be done when they're not there at work. And I said, oh, that makes sense. I have never heard of startup in Bruges, but they're tourists, yeah. So when I came back, I redirected all the processes in the editorial department, which I was managing as editor-in-chief for a magazine, so that I didn't have to be present anymore. It took a few months to change everything, and then in the spring of 2015, I had the impression that I was done, and I could leave for a road trip. So my wife and I, you see her there, we traveled across Europe, from Barcelona to Stockholm in 2 months, and then back to Berlin for sure. Every day we worked in a different co-working space, and every 2 to 3 days we moved to a different city. We wanted to find out how location independent we could really work, and I can tell you it worked without any problems. That was an amazing experience. And fun fact, I didn't told my bosses that I was doing this trip, and they didn't notice for 7 weeks. Because I worked there. I showed them results, and they were happy. But on this trip, when we visited all the co-working spaces, we meet the people who are working in the co-working spaces, who run the co-working spaces. And this was an even more lovely experience because we were welcomed so warmly into the communities all over Europe. And this was really amazing. Yeah? These were all different people, but they were all united by the idea of openness. This was the one thing they all had in common at every single co-working space we visited. So they were all self-determined people who shaped their lives in a different way than I had known before. And after the trip, when we were back in Berlin, I quit my job. Because I really wanted just to be surrounded by these people. Yeah? And I wrote Ansgar Oberholz an email. Ansgar, he's the founder of St. Oberholz in Berlin, one of the first, let's say, co-working places in the world. It's even 50 days older than Brett Neuberg's co-working space. But it was more a cafe, not a co-working space like we know today. So in this email, I explained what I had done that summer and what I think about co-working. So Ansgar hired me as a co-working manager, without any experience in running a co-working space. And this is what I'm doing now for 4 years now. And when I started, we had 1 co-working spaces. Now we have 4, and we are growing. It's really a fun time to be around at Oberholz. Through co-working, I learned what is really, really important to me in life. And this was freedom and to work freely, to make independent decisions and to talk to people who are open-minded and who are also shaped their life in a self-determined way. I didn't know I wanted that. I worked for big companies like Mike did, I think with a smaller salary, but I was a junior. But I wasn't feeling bad before. I was happy and content. But my experience with co-working gave me an insight into myself that showed me who I am and what I want to be. And that was free and to be self-determined. Knowing this and being surrounded by similar thinking people like we have here in the room today, this can be really addictive. This is the reason why I quit my job. And you long for it and you cannot give it up anymore if you want to experience it, I must say. But this longing can be so intense that you throw yourself headlong into the co-working world. And this can be a nice experience. But where there's light, there's also shadow. This is something we say in Germany. I hope it makes sense in English too. I don't know if co-working saved my life. It enriched my life, it changed it, but it also made me sick. This is true. And I think everybody of us knows some of these stories, but we should talk more about it. I almost collapsed from exhaustion this summer because I couldn't stop anymore. I love what I do, but I forgot that I also have personal limits. I forgot to say no, and I forgot this really often, I must say. I forgot that to stop when I couldn't do it anymore, when my body told me this is enough. So that's a problem when you're addicted to something. You no longer act rationally. And this can be really dangerous. Lucky for me, my wife helped me to stop, and I feel better again, and I only had signs of exhaustion. But in the last few years, I have seen other people in the co-working world who have really been damaged in their health. They had burnouts, and that was also due to co-working. And it's not, there's one time the tragedy that we're losing smart heads in our community, but also what it means for these people to have a burnout. I know that co-working makes us all happy. This is so nice about co-working. And I have experienced for myself how beautiful this co-working world can be, how it helps members to realize themselves and above all to work in a psychological, healthier way, because there's so much beauty in the co-working world. In the last co-working space we opened it, I met our first member was somebody who was working in a steel factory, not traditional co-working target group, but he came to us to learn how to create a blog, because he wanted to write about his depression, and this was really amazing. So I think we also should write and talk about the downsides. Co-working has saved people's life. We just heard a really nice story about it. It has changed people, but co-working has also, I must say, destroyed some good friends. And we should pay more attention to our co-working friends and to ourselves if we talk about such a question like that co-working saved my life. I learned through co-working how I want to work and also what is important to me in life. But it has also shown me what I need, not only just what I want. I love networking with people like you here in the room, but I also love being alone for myself. Alone, not lonely. And co-working is the best thing that has happened to me in life so far, because you know what awaits me. But it has given me joy and sorrow. And in both cases, it has shown me who I am. And I mean, for this experience, I'm really grateful to the co-working world. So thank you, co-working world, and thank you for your attention.
Okay, before to the question round, so be prepared for that. I will try to summarize all these opinions. First of all, there's a recurrent topic that every time talking about coworking it appears, which is loneliness. Coworking is a cure for loneliness. It helps out people to do not feel alone. It makes us be connected. On the other hand, we always talk about community. Community, we share values with other people who are equal, more or less, than we are. It's a community of like-minded people. It's a community of people who feel the same. It's a community about people who take life, who observe life in the same way, more or less, than you are. I used to say that if the world was more close to what coworking is, the world will be a much better place. On the other hand, there's something nice which is related with loneliness and community, which is what Mubarak said about coworking kept him coming back. Being fighting one day after the other when you're starting a project is really a pain in the ass, and finding someone beside you that can share those moments, because your couple, I mean, they listen to you because they love you, but they are not sharing the same, especially if they are not freelancers. They listen to you because they love you, but they are not sharing your pain when you hang the phone and shit on someone, or that moment. Maybe the guy or the girl who's beside you have more is more connected to those stories than what she or he actually is. On the other hand, there's a topic which is covered by other conference organizers, which is that the opportunity that events like this one, and how many people is attending for the first time to a coworking event? Raise your hands. Okay. I mean, this is not normal, right? So, I mean, it's difficult for you to keep meeting like-minded people. I mean, you are among a community of people who share your values, your worries, because in your space you are part of the community, but you are a different kind of member because you are running the space. And they are not clients, but they are not friends. They are something strange in between. Some of them end up being friends, but they are not friends. You take a different position. Here, each of us is the same. We are in our community. And it's important that you take time during the year to attend at least one conference. So you can share, you can explain your problems. And it's especially interesting when you attend a conference which is like very packed and the people, it's really close together, because we are not perfect. We are far from perfect. So we share what's good and we also share what's bad. Nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. On the other hand, we learn that travel is dangerous. It's some kind of addictive, right?
Possibly. I don't know why you're looking at me.
No, I was looking at you, but also at Tobias. But yeah, traveling, it keeps your mind alive. It makes you think about things that you take for granted, in the sense that this is like this because it should be like this. When you travel, see other things, see other people living in a different way, it makes you thinking. It makes you keep thinking, and then freedom appears. Boom, you're fucked, right? So you start to trying to decide by your own. You want to do your thing, which is nice. But I have to say that if you start a co-working space, then and now the geek people of the audience will be happy. It can be, we can say that it's a trap, right? Can be a trap. Tobias is a Star Wars fan.
I am.
So he understood. So it can be a trap, because then it becomes more and more and more serious business. So you have to take care. And burnout is an issue. If you go to Asian conferences, managers there have a lot of burnout. Mike knows it. Yeah. Because you are working and the guy beside you is going to take surf while you are working. But here in Europe, every time more and more that the things become more serious, burnout, it's becoming an issue. The nice part is that as we learn, salaries are increasing. So I think that deserves a clap. So never forget to say no, and just do it in a classy way, right?
But I think to touch on what Tobias mentioned earlier about burnout, and I think there's a really famous TED Talk that talks about one of the research has shown that a basis of addiction is the lack of connection, right? And so,
Yeah.
you know, there's it's not ironic that people call me co-workaholic. I mean, I'm addicted to co-working. I just replaced one substance with another. But Tobias is right. You know, we've witnessed and we know people that have been burned out, that have difficulty. You know, there is no university course for being a community manager or for running a space or for supporting people. So like you have to be HR, but you have to be janitorial services, and you have to be a therapist, and you have to be a networker, and you have to be an event planner, you have to do membership sales, you know, you have to do everything. So I think everyone that I've ever met that's in this co-working world, we're all on different paths, but we're kind of like on the same journey. Most of these people that have opened up co-working spaces or got into co-working did so because they didn't have what they needed. They opened a space because there wasn't somewhere for them to work, or they joined a space because they were looking for somewhere. And I think sometimes it's easy to get lost in that, and it's tough to find that line between being a member and being an owner operator, and it can be difficult.
Yeah. One thing I want to add regarding what Mike, the summary that Mike did is, I mean, I'm probably the guy with the least experience in co-working on this panel and generally in this room. But it's obvious that there are a lot of problems with co-working in general. But what I find really interesting is that there are also a lot of people within the co-working community that are working to solve those problems. And if you think about it, it's just generally common in the process that every industry takes to evolve. There will be the phase where people would figure out the problems, and then the phase where people would solve them. And I think one of the solutions is this event where we come and talk about these things. So I think a lot of those things you're talking about are going to be solved.
Great. Now it's the question round. I'm not going to leave, so we have 10 minutes for questions. So you better get creative. Time to wake up. One question. Bernie, one question?
Yeah, Mike, I too have. This community thing is still people go, oh, it's all about community. I just want some answers back here because people, like not people like, oh, sorry.
Uh-oh, don't give him a mic.
And then that's when I knew. I'm trying very hard to be sensible now. So people still run around in new co-working spaces talking about how important community is, and I think they kind of miss the thing. And I'm looking for a way to explain very succinctly, clearly, and fairly about where community sits in the co-working mix. Because at the moment, I launch into a horrible, nasty lecture because I'm so angry at them about just talking about community and missing out so many important things.
Alex Hillman, for
Who?
those of you who don't know Alex Hillman, he's like the OG who owns Indie Hall. He has a really great phrase about innovation. And I think you can swap out the word innovation for community. The phrase used to be, innovation is like, people talking about innovation is like high schoolers talking about sex. The people that are talking about it are not the ones that are doing it, right? You take out the word innovation and put in community, right? Like, people are using community to sell office space. Like, I don't know about you, so someone once asked me what's my favorite co-working space in the world, and I have a lot of dear friends that own co-working spaces. My favorite co-working space in the world is an airport lounge, right? Because there's food, there's beverages, there's a nap room, there's a shower. People are friendly, they'll say hello, but they're not gonna like cheer my ear off for 45 minutes, right? So I think that we get focused on community rather than maybe focusing on what people really are going for, which is productivity, right? At the end of the day, you need Wi-Fi. You need somewhere comfortable that your butt's not gonna fall asleep, and maybe somewhere inspiring, right? But that inspiration can come from a lot of different ways. So I don't know if that's a quasi answer.
I was touched, moved, and inspired by that answer, Michael.
Indeed, there's a phrase from Stefano Borgi He's one of the founders of Copas, and he have a lot of experience in co-working. He says that co-working is like sex. A lot of people talk about it, but a few actually do it.
Okay.
I think
More about sex?
from the you don't want to get me there. I think the guy, what's his name? The numbers guy, Karsten. Please tell me your name, man.
Karsten.
Karsten. Okay, you have to like stamp it for me. It's quite obvious from his speech that people tend to care about something a little bit more than community itself, which is the space. Obviously many other smaller things like price, but also the space and how conducive the space is. And I have, within a few co-working spaces I've been, I've already started noticing that people are trying to use design to solve that. So a lot of people now complain about distractions in co-working spaces and things like that. And I think, slowly people are starting to realize that community is becoming a buzzword. Some people just really want a great place to work and be able to own the time that they are by themselves and the time that they have to talk to someone. And I think one of the things that we will see solving those problems is design. The way we design co-working spaces would evolve. I personally, I went to the point where I took a private office in my co-working space because I suddenly realized that it was quite important for me that I have time that I wasn't talking to anyone. So I think the design is going to affect a lot of how we create co-working spaces, which would eventually start to solve that problem of it's just community and you have to be everybody's guy.
Tobias?
Yeah, I think I just want to add to the community and design thing. Both is correct, I think, but it will be different at every single location you will visit. Yeah, you will nearly never find a co-working space twice out there. I think community is changing, yeah? I mean, when I started in co-working, there were freelancers and startups, and now I have to handle like 50% are teams from big corporates. And they are really different because they bring a different corporate culture with them. And the first 6 months with an employee from a big company, they are complaining about everything. But it's really interesting to see how their behavior is changing over time when they are in the co-working space. And I think this is our main product at the end of the day. It's the culture. It's how we interact with our members. If we let them be alone to focus, we don't have to entertain them. They're not children. I'm absolutely with Mike on that point. And also design is an answer. If the design is an impression of you, of yourself, of your space, yeah? You can't just go to IKEA and we always buy the same tables and chairs. No, it has to be different. It can be high class, can be expensive, this is fine, yeah. Money is not the problem, I think. But it also can be low price. If this is what shows who you are and what kind of space you want to run, at the end you will have the right members because everything who's wrong for your concept will leave, yeah. And I think this also helps us to create at the end the right community of your space. But this takes time, and there can be the wrong member, yeah, or not the member is the wrong person here, but you're the wrong space for that member. And this is why I think we also should be connected with other co-working spaces to recommend somebody, to say, you should try this co-working space. There you probably would feel better than here. Perhaps we are just the closest one to your flat, but we're not the right one for yourself.
Were you reading my mind? Everything. There's a Kansas City co-working alliance where all of the independently owned co-working spaces joined and made a promise to each other that if someone takes a tour and if they're not a good fit or they don't feel like they're going to join, that the space owner or manager doesn't let that person leave without giving them at least a recommendation or two. And it was a rising tide has lifted that entire local industry. The other thing that you literally said was it's space as a service, right? So people need space for celebration, collaboration, education, focus, right? And so you have the space that you have, and rather than trying to use a generic community to just be an umbrella for everything, you focus on what you do, right? earlier today, someone mentioned niche co-working. There's co-working for medical tech startups, food, shared kitchens. There's a co-working space for legal marijuana in Denver, right? Like whether it be, well, yeah, whether it be,
I want to move there.
whether it be industry specific or based on what the members need, I think that community builds around the type of the culture that you create. Sorry.
Someone just said there's a nudist co-working space. Can you send me the location?
Guys, behave. One last question.
My question is untraditional. It's to Tobias. I want to ask, how did your life manage to make you stop, and how did you find the balance between a family and the business? Because I have some problems recently, and I'm really curious. Thank you.
And
I'm
all
all
of
ears
this in
too.
1 minute.
I'm all ears.
One minute. I had a problem with family too, because when you have, at a normal working day, you talk to 100, 120 people in a co-working space. So when I was at home in the evening, I didn't want to talk anymore. This was a problem with my wife, because this was our quality time. Then it got worse, because my wife joined St. Oberholz, and she's now the head of office for us. So if there's something wrong at work, I hear it twice. I hear it during the day, and I hear it in the evening in bed too. What went wrong today?
The couple that co-works together stays
Yeah.
together, right?
We hope so. No, the best thing is leave your own co-working space. Take quality time somewhere else. I can't work in my own space anymore. So. Yesterday evening in my hotel room, I was so fucking productive. I wasn't so good for weeks, I must say. Yeah, we're traveling a lot. I mean, we also visit co-working spaces when we're somewhere else, but it's still more than a hobby. It's something I really love. But leave, yeah, run away from your own co-working space. Best thing you can do, I guess, because then nobody is coming to you with the small problems that shouldn't be a problem at all. You probably have colleagues, you have a team, yeah, and they have to learn to handle the small stuff too. I don't know if you're a manager or founder, but they should come to you for the big questions, not for the small ones. Yeah. And so, yeah, be somewhere else. Manage your space remotely.
Wow.
This worked best for me, I must say. I'm not the community manager anymore. Yeah? I have the luxury to do my work from somewhere else. But to get some distance between you and your space is really important.
Okay. Being in the States, it's a privilege, but it's also an obligation. So any of you can come and bother any of the speakers later. I mean, it's your obligation and it's ours to reply. So we invite you all, right, to come and ask and talk and do whatever you want. To close this session, it's difficult to make this seated, so I hope this is not destroyed. There's one point which I kept for the end, which is there was something which was said, and it's also something that Misha said before, that is that co-working, it's about caring. When I'm speaking in a conference or I always like to end with a phrase in bold letters, big letters, which is do care about you do. Co-working, it's about caring. And also, we should not undervalue the power of giving. When you do a conference and ask people to participate and to help others, usually the results of the people which have been given, it's good. But the people who's actually giving, it's even much better. They feel much better. It's very powerful to give. It's very powerful to do good and help others. I was raised as designer, industrial designer. And right now, I think that as many people in co-working, I'm in co-working because I like to help people. So don't underestimate the power of giving and do care about what you do. Thank you.